Next we're going to talk about FIFA on the Switch. This may not seem like a topic we would normally discuss. However, this particular game holds a great deal of significance for Switch owners and for Electronic Arts because EA has already gone on record as saying that it was looking at how the Switch version of FIFA does to decide on whether it should continue support of the platform going forward. And based upon initial sales, it appears in the UK at least that the Switch version made up less than 5% of total sales of FIFA 18.
I thought it was less than 1%.
Was it less than 1%?
I think I said
well, less than 5 is still accurate, by the way.
Yeah, but it was less than 1%, and it sold slightly less than the 360 version.
Okay. So it's done very poorly in the UK. We don't know any US numbers yet. That's the first issue. The second issue is that it does not include the ability to play head-to-head against friends. EA has gone on record as saying this is due to a lack of infrastructure for the Switch's online environment.
I buy that.
Number 3, the reviews for the game have not been great, whereas the PS4, Xbox One versions are getting around a 9. The Switch version has been getting anywhere from a 6 to a 7.5 based upon the reviews that I have seen thus far. So, knowing all this, knowing what EA has said already, do you think this is it?
Like for EA?
Yeah,
Switch games?
making games on Switch.
Maybe. Wouldn't surprise me. EA does not usually give second chances unless you're Mirror's Edge.
Yeah, and it learned that it should never give second chances. Yeah, so do you think EA? I mean, with the popularity of the Switch, do you really think EA will just be one and done? Because look, it looks like it's going to completely flop.
Right.
EA has gone on record saying it had to do a lot of extra work on this version than it had to do on the other ports of the game.
It's like, look, if this one doesn't fly, I mean, it's FIFA. Like, if there's nothing about FIFA in the UK that makes people want to jump on that, like, what other EA property is going to tempt people? Like, maybe a Madden next year?
Yeah. Do you think it's fair to Nintendo?
Who cares?
People who own the Switch care because
it's business. Like, if it doesn't sell, don't put it on there.
I get that. But do you think that this was a fair, giving the platform a fair chance? Because EA has done this with Nintendo before. It says, well, we're working on these games. We're going to put them out on Switch and see how they do. And if they do good, then we'll support it more. But what ends up happening is EA puts out bad games on Nintendo platforms. Remember Madden 64? The one and only Madden game that ever came out for the N64, and it was a complete train wreck? And then instead of EA saying, well, our game really wasn't up to scratch, let's put out a really good game and see, and use that as the litmus test. It puts out the one poor game and then says, well, it didn't do well. It's almost like EA feels like it has to at least try to appease Nintendo fans, knowing full well that this game is not going to be good and it's not going to sell. It did this again with the Wii, and what did we end up getting from EA in that case?
Boom Blocks.
Right, which actually was a pretty darn good game, I'll say.
Yeah, it was.
But its appeal was zero. It's like, hey, let's play Jenga with Wii remotes. Like, no, I'll just play Jenga right here on my coffee table. Like, I don't feel like EA ever gives Nintendo a fair shot on its hardware.
They did give Boom Blocks a sequel.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried. The thing about
but is that trying, though? When you know what EA puts out on
I
other
thought Boom Blocks was
platforms,
great.
I did too, but that's not the games that sell. It's a puzzle game. Those games...
Well, you know what game does sell is FIFA, and this one apparently didn't.
Right,
like,
but
whether FIFA's good or not doesn't really matter. Like when it comes down to selling 1% of the number of people, overwhelmingly for FIFA, people overwhelmingly chose the more powerful hardware that displays this thing properly. Like that,
versus being able to play it on the go.
Yeah, no one cares. And I've said that repeatedly. When it comes down to it, people are going to want the better experience rather than being able to play a lesser version on the train. Like, I just don't think that's a thing outside of a very vocal core group. So while maybe FIFA, you and I might not consider FIFA the greatest litmus test in the world, like it's EA's biggest franchise, I think you could argue.
It is.
And like outside of maybe putting Plants vs. Zombies on it, I don't know what else you want to use to tip your toe in that water. Like I think you're going to see the same thing with the Bethesda games. I don't think the Bethesda games, maybe outside of Skyrim might have some appeal because of the portability.
I think Skyrim was going to do well.
But I don't, in terms of like Wolfenstein, who's going to pick that version over the other versions if they have another way of playing that game?
I would be surprised if you look at total sales of Wolfenstein 2, if the Switch even makes up 5% of them.
Yeah. Like, it's just...
And look, it is behind the 8 ball. It has a much smaller installed base and all that, but...
Sure. But, like, percentage doesn't matter on that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about, like, what
attach rate is what you would be
somewhat,
talking about.
But it's
otherwise.
who would pick that over the other versions? You're either double dipping, or if you're only buying one, you're probably not buying the one on the lesser hardware.
Yeah.
Unless you really are unless you spend 3 hours on a bus every day, then it would make sense, I guess. But
this is a case, though, where I feel like if you're a Nintendo fan and you, God bless you, you only had a Wii U and then you upgraded to Switch after that, this might be one of those cases where you need to go out and buy the game. Because if you don't, it's going to be the same thing all over again with the Switch like it was with Nintendo's last
and then
couple
EA
consoles.
won't make games for the Switch, and you won't be able to play...
Yeah. Well, I mean, EA at this point has really just come down to driving games, sports games,
like you really
and Battlefront.
Yeah, Battlefront
and
Battlefield and
that's
Need
it.
for Speed and take care. Like
Yeah.
that's the end of it's. I mean, EA not making. I mean, it's not the death blow that it was in the Dreamcast era. I
think the problem though is you have
EA is also not making VR games. They're just not into.
Right.
They're not into the risky stuff.
Which does well for their stockholders.
Yeah.
But I think maybe the bigger issue is it's like a dog whistle to other publishers. So 2K right now, kind of sitting on the fence. It's dipping its toes in with WWE 2K18 and NBA 2K18. If those first two games don't sell well, and they look at EA's product and they're like, EA has the best soccer game, it didn't sell, our wrestling game didn't sell, our basketball game didn't sell, you got to figure 2K is probably, that one foot that's in the door is getting pulled out of the door, and they're out. And then you have EA and 2K that are both saying, well, and then if you dogpile onto that with Bethesda, that could be it for Switch third-party support, which I will admit, it already has more than I thought it was going to get.
Right, right. But again, like none of those versions of those games have any appeal to me.
Yeah.
Like if I have other platforms other than
playing
Nintendo.
Skyrim on the go has some appeal to me, definitely.
Playing Skyrim without mods is non-starter to me.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, you've played a metric ton of Skyrim.
Right,
though.
but I mean, if you're not going to give me the full experience, like, what's the point? I mean,
like,
even on any other
it.
console, even to some degree the PS4, you can play with mod support, which makes the game better and gives you some really important quality of life upgrades that are not so far. I mean, maybe they'll put that mod support in once Nintendo has an online infrastructure to speak of, like early next year. But right now at launch, I don't think you're getting a very inferior Skyrim experience outside of the ability to take it outside the house.
To me, that has charm, and I'm just somebody.
Not for $60, it doesn't.
I'm just someone who played Skyrim once, finished it, never went back, never messed with mods. I just played through the campaign, and I was done with it. So to me, it does still have some appeal. But I think the other thing that's going against Switch in this particular case, and with this particular timing, is that this holiday season, when someone buys a game for Switch, what are they going to buy? They're going to buy Mario.
And Zelda, if they haven't already.
Right. Like, that has been a problem for Nintendo all along, is that when third parties do show up, Nintendo fans do not buy third-party games.
And the irony of it is that when they're really going to need third-party support to keep people interested is not 2018, and they're not going to have it because none of the stuff this year is going to sell.
Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, I'm flabbergasted at the sales of Switch. I mean, it just continues to just roll and roll.
Well, because people are buying it for Nintendo's output, because that's what people buy Nintendo systems for, and they have since the GameCube. That's basically been the rule. You have a Nintendo system, you play the Nintendo releases on it. You have another game console or a PC to play everything else on.
And I think that's where Microsoft.
If Nintendo feels like Nintendo wants to break out of that mold a little bit, or they wouldn't be courting Bethesda the way they are to get 3 games ported over here. They clearly talked EA into doing something they didn't want to do. Like this FIFA game feels like they grudgingly made it.
And I think that is where Nintendo's strategy for lower-powered hardware burns it the worst.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at Microsoft...
Nintendo can make something that look, all this stuff like Splatoon 2 and Mario plus Rabbids and Mario Odyssey, they've got this really sharp, clean look to them that makes them, they're clearly not technologically on the same level as something like Horizon, but they look great.
Yeah.
They found the art, kind of the house style that takes the best advantage of the hardware at the resolution they're putting out at, and it looks fantastic. It looks really sharp and great and appealing. And can other companies necessarily do that? No, because that's not what their target, that's not what Doom is supposed to look like. They're lucky that Doom is so scalable, because it doesn't, Doom can run, up and down pretty easy on that engine, and they're doing that on the Switch, and it looks pretty good. But like, other companies are not necessarily that agile in terms of what they can put on a system that way.
And this is where Microsoft, because I could say the same thing about Microsoft in the Xbox One era, is that you bought an Xbox One to play Microsoft's games, maybe.
Such as it is.
But what you're seeing with Microsoft is, one, its hardware was on par, close to on par with PS4 all along. But now, it gets it. It's like, we have nothing to get people to buy our console other than our games. And our games have fallen into this vicious cycle. So what does it do? It creates a box that makes sure that all third-party games look the best on its box and play the best on its box. And so suddenly, it has a proposition to give consumers. With Nintendo, that's not the case. If you're a third-party publisher looking at releasing games on a Nintendo platform, there's none of that. It's like, hey, we hope these people that bought the Switch didn't buy this already on the other consoles.
Right.
That's a small market. So,
and that it fits on a cartridge without having to use up too much downloadable content space.
Right. Or having to charge extra money for your version versus the other versions, which is...
Like with L.A. Noire.
Which pretty much everything at this point, any third-party game. So, I don't know. I hope EA will give Switch another chance, because I don't feel like this was really a fair chance.
I don't see what they would do that with, though. I guess it would be like, when you're like, okay, give EA give it another chance.
The new Need for Speed, Payback, that might be one.
I don't know if that's going to sell any other consoles.
I mean, there's an open market there on Switch right now. There's really
no driving, really. Yeah,
none. I mean, there's this mobile game that's coming out that has been on iOS and Android for like 2 years.
Who's got the San Francisco Rush 2049 rights? Let's bring that back.
Let's make that happen. I'm down with that. But see, you're right though. That is like something that a publisher could do. They could be like, hey, let's think back to like maybe some of the racing games that were big on Nintendo platforms in the past. Let's revive that. Let's create another one that resonates with the Nintendo fans. That might work. But it seems to me the route that third-party publishers are taking right now with Switch is the exact wrong one.
Yeah, you're just it basically is the Vita thing, where it's like, okay, so you're not trying to sell me new games that take advantage of this platform in a way that no other platform can do. You're just kneecapping your other games and trying to sell me that as, it's better because you can play it on your lap, kind of thing.
And you're right,
and that didn't work for the Vita, and it's not going to work for this because it doesn't capture the mainstream's imagination.
And it is an apt comparison, too, especially now that pretty much every game that comes out on Vita is a cross-play title, where you buy it once and you essentially get both a handheld and a console version. So, and you're right, it has absolutely not worked for Sony at all. So, we'll see. I mean, right now Nintendo has plenty of first-party stuff to keep it chugging and keep it going.
I'd be interested to see if EA gives them another shot once the online infrastructure is in place.
Yeah.
Because, look, I mean, I think part of the thing that's going to make some of these third-party publishers decide one way or the other is the online infrastructure and whether they can sell you loot boxes efficiently.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Like, the game-as-service platform is going to be, if you can't put that model on there easily, that's going to be one of the biggest barriers. You don't want to think about it that way. But monetarily, if our money comes from this whole idea of milking people for excess content after the fact, and Nintendo's system doesn't support that easily, that's going to be the biggest hurdle, bigger than almost any other hurdle you can think of this generation.
Another hurdle that's coming up for Nintendo is publishers are moving away from releasing versions for PS3 and Xbox 360 now.
Right.
And that was always kind of something that Nintendo could hold on to. Hey, they're already creating these versions for last gen that they could kind of just port over to our machine. Now those are going away. Those teams are dissolving. That software isn't being created for lesser hardware now.
Well, they need to what they need to focus on is basically they need the third parties to be doing stuff like Mario plus Rabbids.
Yeah.
Like you need original games built for the system, built to appeal to the audience, and so far only Ubisoft seems interested in doing that.
Yeah. So we'll see, but
you can only lean on the indie game thing, and they are doing the indie game thing really, really well.
Oh my god! Here's the thing I wonder though: is it too much? Like, literally every day, 5 more indie games are announced for Switch, and they're all just coming at once in this just big pile. There were 18 games released for Switch last week.
It can't hurt too much. I mean,
they're always going to live on the service.
I mean, they got to improve the eShop so you can browse them better.
Yeah.
But I would argue that, like, as a flip side of the idea that, like, I don't want to pay $60 again for a portable version of a game I already own twice.
Yeah.
I might pay $10 for an indie game that I like to play and would like to play on the plane.
Yeah.
You know, because that's something that would kind of fit in the bite-size kind of mobile space better.
Yeah.
And like if I could get like a nice version on Switch for like $9 or $15 of like Sundered or Axiom Verge, I do. Yeah, that's cool. Like. But it's just like rebuying full-price AAA games again, like that run less. Because like, look, Sundered or whatever game like that's going to look pretty much the same on my PC or on the Switch.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, it's also not going to eat up your battery on your Switch like a lot of other games would.
And that's I think that's a much smarter tactic. And Nintendo is leaning into that really hard, and that's really smart. And I think that's going to buy them some time next year.
But do you think that all these indie games? Because one thing I will say is that despite some of the issues that Playtonic has had with Yooka-Laylee and a couple other games working with Unity on Switch, it certainly appears that porting a game to Switch, at least indie games, is very quick and very easy, which is good. But it's like we're getting this big pile, like, boom, like right away, and then what happens?
Well, I think the stream of indie stuff will continue through next. I mean, it's going to be pretty steady. I don't look. The main issue here for me is like there's no real way to browse them on the eShop.
Yeah, it's
right
tough.
Now.
Yeah.
Like you've got basically your 3 highlight places, and then you can search for them directly. But there's no way to just sort of like, hey, just dig through and show me stuff. Just let me see what you got. There's no way to do that yet. I think we're really, Mario is the 800-pound gorilla of the fall here. Like, that's the only thing Nintendo really needs to focus on getting right now. But come January, and moving into Q1 or whatever, I assume sometime in mid-January, because that's also when they announced the Wii eShop will shut down. So to me, that would indicate that that's when they're going to make that transition. Like that eShop, the new eShop basically has the Switch eShop has to be robust and functional, and the online stuff has to be there so that it becomes this indie marketplace that's the best way to play these games, on the go, basically. Basically a way to play these games in a different way than any other console offers you to be able to play them. And that's where their strength is going to be there, because playing most of these indie games on the Switch is not going to be a lesser experience technologically than any of the other consoles. And right there, in that sense, the price is probably going to be the same because it's digital. There's no cartridge involved for most of them, and you can take them on the go. And like, there's no downside to that. Like that's where how the Switch functions. There's nothing but added value there.
Well, the only downside is that these games have been on other platforms in some cases for like 3 years. So.
But who has every indie game?
Yeah.
There's always going to be a couple you've never played before, and I think that's part of why they're putting so many on there right now is because none of us have played all the indie games we're interested in. Some of these games that are coming to the Switch maybe are stuff you've never even heard of before or never gotten around to, and maybe now you give it a shot on the Switch because at least that way it's another way to play it.
It's better than nothing.
Right.
Because
that's what Nintendo systems have had before.
Yeah, we both know there have been long periods of nothing before, where it didn't even have the relationship with the indies to fill in those gaps.
I think the main thing they need to focus on is they've got that happening. That's cool. Their own first-party output is going to be fine. I don't care about Kirby and Yoshi, but it's something.
And other people do. So.
But they need more Mario plus Rabbids style things. They need third parties working on custom content, unique exclusives that make people happy to own that system outside of Nintendo's own output. They don't all have to be Nintendo crossovers, but just that kind of thing.
Games tailored to Nintendo's audience, essentially.
Yeah. You have the third parties have to, if they're interested, they have to accept that they are not making games for the same audience they are on the PlayStation and the Xbox. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing.